Some men believe that women move on easily, that once a relationship ends, or even if it never really began, she simply forgets him and goes on like nothing ever happened. But the truth is, emotional connection doesn't work that way. Women may not always show it, but certain men leave a lasting impact that stays with them, sometimes for years. And it's not about wealth. It's not about a perfect face or a flawless body. It's about how a man chooses to show up. Welcome to the channel. I'm so glad you're here. This space is about clarity, connection, and deep insight into relationships and the human heart. Whether you're dating, committed, or just trying to understand the deeper emotional world of women, you're in the right place. And today we're going to talk about something powerful, something that most men overlook. This isn't about tactics or pickup lines. It's about presence, true masculine presence. It's about how a man carries himself, his energy, his integrity, his emotional depth. Because when a man shows up consistently with strength, groundedness, and clarity, not from neediness or performance, but from a place of wholeness, he becomes unforgettable. Not because he begged for attention, but because his presence demanded respect. The reality is, most men don't do this. They try to impress, they play games. They project confidence, but it's not rooted in anything real. And because of that, they're easy to forget. But the ones who don't chase or perform, the ones who embody a calm, confident presence, those are the ones that women remember. They're the men who stick in the back of her mind long after he's out of her life. And not because she's longing for him, but because she respects how he made her feel and how he carried himself. In this video, I'm going to break down 5 specific traits that make a man unforgettable to a woman. And if you're already doing them, you probably already know the impact they have. But if you're not, this is your moment to shift everything. Because the way a woman responds to you, trusts you, and ultimately remembers you has very little to do with surface-level charm and everything to do with emotional substance. So whether you're single, dating, or in a relationship, what you're about to hear could change the way you connect with women for the rest of your life. Let's dive in. Trait 1. He walks away like he means it there. As something profoundly unforgettable about a man who knows when to walk away and does it with clarity, calm, and self-respect. Not in anger, not in silence. Not in some dramatic exit, but with intention and peace. Most men linger too long in situations that aren't aligned. They stay in hopes that she change, that she suddenly sees value, or that things will somehow fix themselves. That energy feels heavy. It clings. And often, it pushes women away more than they even realize. But a man who truly knows himself, who understands what he wants and what he absolutely will not tolerate, has no need to stay where he's not being met. When he walks away, it's not an act of coldness, it's an act of strength, of self-respect, and women notice that. Not always in the moment, but eventually they do. Imagine a woman giving mixed signals. One day she's engaged, affectionate, sending long texts, maybe even talking about the future. The next day, she pulls back. She's distant, unavailable, slow to respond, emotionally elsewhere. Most men in that situation would feel anxious. They'd lean in more, try harder, ask what's wrong, offer reassurance, try to be good enough to get her back into it. But not this man. This man observes the shift. He doesn't panic. He doesn't chase. He allows space to see if things balance out. And if they don't, he responds, not reacts. He gently and directly communicates that he's not interested in emotional confusion or inconsistency. And then he leaves. No begging. No anger. No disappearing act. Just honesty and closure. And that kind of exit stays with her. Because it's not fueled by ego or resentment. It's fueled by self-worth. He didn't villainize her. He didn't turn it into a game. He simply chose not to participate in something that no longer felt emotionally safe or aligned. And that leaves an impression. Maybe not instantly, but down the road when she meets other men who tolerate breadcrumbs, who settle for hot and cold energy, who won't walk away unless they're pushed, she'll remember the one who didn't need to be convinced. Walking away isn't about punishment. It's not a tactic. It's a reflection of a man who understands his value and refuses to stay where that value isn't being met with the same energy. That kind of man, she doesn't forget him. Trait 2, he makes her feel safe without smothering her. One of the most powerful experiences a woman can have with a man is feeling emotionally safe. And it's something she never forgets, not because it's dramatic or flashy, but because it's rare. It's not about being the strongest guy in the room or playing protector 24/7. Emotional safety is quieter, more subtle, and far more lasting. It's the feeling of being able to exhale, to be seen, heard, and accepted without judgment, without having to shrink or edit herself just to keep the peace. And this is where many men, even well-meaning ones, miss the mark. They think being safe means being constantly available. Always. Checking in, fixing her problems. Being involved in every part of her day. But that's not safety. That's pressure. That's good intentions turning into control. True emotional safety begins with how a man manages himself. When he's steady, calm, clear, and grounded, she feels that. When he listens without interrupting, without jumping to conclusions or offering advice she never asked for, she feels it even more. She can feel when a man's energy says, "You're allowed to just be. I'm not here to fix you. I'm just here with you." Listening, real listening, is a powerful part of that. Not the kind of listening where he's just waiting for his turn to speak, but the kind where she actually feels heard. And when she feels heard, she softens, because it's so rare. Most people, men and women, are starving to be understood. So when a man creates that space, it becomes unforgettable. And here's what really separates the man who provides safety. He doesn't hover. He doesn't need constant reassurance. He doesn't get anxious when she needs time alone. He gives her space, but not in a distant or disconnected way. He stays emotionally present, just not overwhelming. That's the difference. He's not pulling away, but he's not crowding her either. And that balance, that confidence in himself, gives her permission to be confident in the connection. And maybe most importantly, he doesn't avoid hard conversations. He doesn't go silent to avoid conflict, and he doesn't blow up when things get tense. He stays grounded. He communicates directly, clearly, and with respect, even when the conversation is uncomfortable. That emotional maturity builds trust. That trust builds connection. And that connection builds a kind of bond that doesn't easily fade. No man is perfect. But the man who is consistent, the man who doesn't play games, who brings peace without smothering her, that man creates something that stays with her. Not because he demanded it, but because she felt safe enough to be real with him. And in a world full of confusion, that kind of clarity is unforgettable. Trait 3. He says what most men won't. There is something unforgettable about a man who speaks his truth, not to provoke, not to argue, but simply because it's real. He's not loud about it. He's not dramatic. He's just honest. And in a world where so many people are afraid to say what they truly feel, that kind of honesty stands out. Because it's rare. Let's be clear. This isn't about being brutally honest for the sake of impact. It's not about picking fights or constantly challenging her to prove a point. That kind of behavior doesn't build trust, it builds walls. What makes this man different is that he's willing to say the things most men won't, the things that feel vulnerable, the things that risk not being understood. He's not trying to win approval. He's not filtering himself just to keep the peace. He's speaking from a grounded place where clarity matters more than comfort. Most men stay quiet when something bothers them. They avoid hard conversations. They smooth things over. They say what they think she wants to hear because deep down they're afraid of messing things up, afraid of rejection, afraid of rocking the boat. But in trying to protect the connection, they end up weakening it. The relationship feels safe, but not in a good way. It's surface level, predictable, forgettable. But when a man is willing to go deeper, to say, "That didn't sit right with me," or "This isn't working for me," or even "I don't have the answer, but this is how I feel," that's when things shift. That kind of honesty creates trust. Not just romantic trust, but emotional trust. Because she knows she's not just hearing what's easy, she's hearing what's real. And here's the part that really lands. When a man is honest and respectful, she doesn't feel attacked, she feels safe. Safe enough to open up in return. Safe enough to be honest herself. That's how depth is built. That's how intimacy becomes more than just closeness. It becomes truth. It also takes real confidence to admit what you don't know. To say, "I'm struggling with this," or "That hurt me," instead of pretending you've got it all together. That level of vulnerability isn't weakness, it's power. And it's magnetic. Because most men play it safe. They stay on the surface. But the man who says what others won't, who stands in his truth without forcing it on anyone, he leaves an impression. She may not always agree with what he says, but she remember how real it felt, how rare it was. And that kind of man, the one who doesn't hide behind performance or silence, he doesn't just get remembered. He gets respected. Trait 4. He never chases, he leads. One of the most striking differences between men who get remembered and those who don't is how they approach connection. Most men chase. They put in too much effort too soon. They overthink every message, every interaction, trying desperately to get noticed or liked. They make the woman the center of their world before anything real has even formed. But chasing? That doesn't come from confidence. It comes from fear. Fear of missing out. Fear of not being enough. Chasing looks like constant check-ins, always starting conversations, over-explaining intentions, and trying to win her over by sheer effort. At first glance, it might seem like dedication, but what it really does is create pressure. It sends a message that your time, your attention, your energy are only valuable if she responds exactly how you want. And that's not leadership. That's reacting. Leadership is something else entirely. A man who leads is clear about his interest, but he's not dependent on her response. He makes the first move, yes, but he's watching her signals and adjusting with respect to mutual effort. He's not trying to prove himself. He's simply showing who he is and letting her decide if she wants to be part of that. When a man leads, he sets the pace not to control or manipulate, but from a place of quiet confidence. He knows what he's willing to invest, and what he isn't. He moves things forward intentionally, never forcing, never pressuring. He's comfortable with space and time. And if things don't unfold as he hoped, that's okay. Because he understands his value doesn't depend on someone else's interest. Leadership also means having a life with direction and purpose, one that doesn't pause or pivot just because a new person shows up. He invites her into that world instead of trying to build one exclusively around her. That balance between presence and independence, that rare mix, sends a powerful message without a single word. Women notice that difference. It feels solid, grounded, attractive, unlike chasing, which often feels needy, desperate, or overwhelming. Leading is calm, steady, and self-assured. When a man leads with that kind of confidence, his interest hits differently. It's memorable. At its core, leadership is self-control. It's knowing when to step forward and when to give space. It's trusting that the right connection won't require begging or convincing, and if it's not right, no amount of chasing will change that, and that's okay. This mindset, that calm, quiet confidence, is what truly sets a man apart, because anyone can chase, but the man who leads, he's the one she remembers. Trait 5. He knows when to shut up. One of the most overlooked traits that makes a man truly unforgettable is his ability to be quiet at the right time. Not passive, not withdrawn, but intentional. He doesn't feel the need to fill every silence. He's not constantly talking just to prove he knows something or to control the conversation. He understands that sometimes the most powerful thing he can say is nothing at all. A lot of men make the mistake of thinking silence equals weakness. So they over-explain. They defend themselves too much. They try to fix every problem by talking it to death. But here's the truth. Always needing to say something often does more harm than good. It creates pressure. It comes off as insecurity. And most importantly, it makes a woman feel like she's not really being heard, she's just being talked at. Sometimes silence shows strength. It shows presence. It shows that you're not reacting emotionally to every little thing. That calm, grounded energy, that steadiness, that's what sticks with a woman, especially in a world where most people are quick to argue or overshare. Here's a moment that perfectly illustrates this. She's upset. She's venting, not asking for solutions, just letting it out. Most guys would interrupt with advice, toss out ideas, or try to fix it, thinking they're being helpful. But this man, he listens. He lets her speak. He stays with her, nods when needed, doesn't rush her, doesn't try to fix anything, he just listens. And when she pauses, he simply says, "I hear you." That's it. No lecture, no speech. Just calm presence. And it changes everything. She feels safe not because he had the perfect words, but because he didn't make it about him. He wasn't uncomfortable with her emotions. He didn't try to stop them. He let her be real. And that leaves a lasting impression. The same mindset shows up during conflict too. When things get tense, many men either shut down completely or talk too much trying to explain, defend, or control the situation. But the man who stays calm, thinks before speaking, and waits for the right moment to respond, that's a man who earns respect. His silence isn't passive, it's steady. Knowing when to speak is a skill. Knowing when not to speak is maturity. And men who master this stand out not because they say more, but because what they do say matters. When a man knows how to sit with silence without making it awkward, when he doesn't rush to fill the space with noise, when he can just be there, she notices. And more importantly, she remembers. 6. He doesn't tolerate low standards. 1. Of the clear signs of a man who sticks in a woman's memory is how he handles his standards, not just what he says he wants, but what he accepts. Many men talk a good game. They say they want honesty, consistency, respect, and effort. But when it comes down to it, they tolerate the exact opposite just to keep someone around. That's where the difference lies. The man who doesn't tolerate low standards doesn't say one thing and do another. He holds himself and the people in his life to a certain level of respect, and doesn't lower that bar to avoid conflict or loneliness. This isn't about being harsh or inflexible. It's about clarity, knowing the kind of behavior he's willing to allow in his space and being consistent about it. He doesn't stick around when someone is hot and cold, constantly testing his patience or putting in the bare minimum. He doesn't make excuses for bad communication or lack of effort. He pays attention to patterns, not just promises, and this applies not only to dating but to how he lives his life. A man who holds high standards is intentional with how he speaks, how he treats people, how he spends his time, and what kind of energy he allows into his world. That consistency builds trust. His standards aren't just rules, they reflect his core values. Women notice this because it creates a clear energy. They know they can't just do whatever they want and expect him to stick around. Not because he threatens to leave, but because he's clearly not someone who compromises his core values for temporary comfort. That quiet confidence leaves a stronger impression than any words ever could. The truth is, anyone can talk about boundaries or post about self-respect. But living it day in and day out, that's what makes the difference. And that's what she remembers, not just how he treated her when things were good, but how he handled himself when things got off track. Did he shrink? Did he chase? Or did he stay true to what he stood for? A man who doesn't tolerate low standards isn't hard to find because he's cold or guarded. He's hard to find because he's solid. He's not desperate for connection. He's not moved by pressure. He chooses what aligns with him and lets go of what doesn't. That kind of self-respect sticks with a woman because most people compromise too quickly, but the man who stays rooted in his standards, he's not easy to forget. 7. He leaves her better than he found her. The kind of man a woman remembers isn't just the one who made her laugh, made her feel desired, or impressed her in the short term. It's the one who left a positive impact, who challenged her to grow, who showed up with character, not just charm. A man who left her better than he found her, not because he was perfect, but because he moved with purpose and integrity. This doesn't mean you need to be her therapist, fix her problems, or try to change her. It means that in the time you spent together, whether it was a relationship, a few months of dating, or something short, you added value. She walked away knowing a little more about herself, about relationships, or even just about what she deserves. Here's the truth some men need to hear. If you leave women confused, emotionally drained, or questioning their worth, that's not a win. It's not power, it's immaturity. Being unforgettable doesn't come from how good your game is. It comes from how you treat people when there's nothing in it for you. So ask yourself, are you building something when you're with someone? Or are you just taking what you can and moving on when it's no longer convenient? A man who leaves a woman better than he found her takes responsibility for how he shows up. He doesn't play with emotions. He's honest even when it's uncomfortable. He sets clear boundaries and respects hers. He doesn't fake interest to get what he wants, then disappear when it's time for real conversations. That kind of behavior is everywhere and forgettable. What's rare is the man who's intentional, who knows the energy he brings, who doesn't shy away from hard truths but also doesn't make things harder than they need to be. He's real, kind, and solid. And even if things don't work out, she looks back and thinks, I learned something from that. I grew from that. That's the mark of a high-value man. And if you're not there yet, that's okay. Most men are taught this stuff, but now's the time to wake up and reflect. Are you showing up as someone who adds value or someone who just takes up space? Are you leading with honesty and respect or with ego and fear? You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have all the answers. But you do need to take responsibility for how you move in relationships. That's how you grow. That's how you stand out. And that's how you become the kind of man a woman doesn't forget. Most men focus on being liked in the moment. But the men women remember are always the most charming or the most physically impressive. They're the ones who showed up with consistency, clarity, and character. Here's something to think about. It's not that women have too high standards. It's that too many men are okay living below theirs. What you do, how you speak, the way you carry yourself, it all leaves a mark. And it's not about performing or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about being grounded in who you are and refusing to drop your standards just to keep someone interested. If you're doing some of these things already, keep going. You're on the right track. If not, don't overthink it. Just start paying attention. Show up with intention. Speak your truth. Lead with calm confidence. You'd be surprised how far that alone can take you. Now, I want to hear from you. Which one of these points hit home the most? Have you seen any of these play out in your own life, whether by doing them or missing the mark? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them. I'll be responding. I'm here to have real conversations, not just post and disappear. So let's talk. And if this gave you something to think about, consider sharing it with someone who needs to hear it too. You showing up better helps everyone around you.